Peter Thiel's recent interview with the New York Times provides us with a good contemporary example of inverted spirituality.
I think you would prefer the human race to endure, right? You're hesitating.
Yeah, well,
yes?
I don't know. I would.
This is a long hesitation. This is a long hesitation.
There's so many questions implicit in this.
Should the human race survive?
Yes.
Okay.
But
and it's particularly interesting for its insight into one of the key figures pushing technocracy's attempt to wear a Christian, usually Catholic, skin suit. We're living through a period of popular disillusion and frustration, which manifests as the search for roots, identity, religion, solid principles, very often. So it makes sense that some members of the elite, consciously or not, would be looking for a trad LARP, would want to take some of that reactionary energy for themselves. And again, they may genuinely feel attracted to it. That's nothing new, but we're seeing it with Vans, whose career Thiel sponsored, or Larry Ellison.
Citizens will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on.
Funding Tony Blair's Faith Foundation, Blair himself is a champion of
digital ID
and liberal pseudo-Catholicism. So there's a definite convergence between being close to Catholic or being fake Catholic and big tech in politics. Anyway, let's dig into Thiel.
Yeah, transhumanism is this, the ideal was this radical transformation where your human natural body gets transformed into an immortal body. And there's a critique of, let's say, the trans people in a sexual context, or transvestite is someone who changes their clothes and cross-dresses. And a transsexual is someone where you change your penis into a vagina. And we can then debate how well those surgeries work. But we want more transformation than that. We want more transformation than that. The critique is not that it's weird and unnatural. It's so pathetically little. And we want more than cross-dressing or changing your sex organs. We want you to be able to change your heart and change your mind and change your whole body. And then Orthodox Christianity, by the way, the critique Orthodox Christianity has of this is these things don't go far enough.
On one level, this is a pretty common Gen X and Boomer talking point. You've never met a conservative like me. I oppose current year thing, but because it doesn't go far enough, I'm more radical than you. It's a kind of self-defeating rhetoric. Anyway, Thiel's thinking throughout the interview is pretty sloppy, but the idea here seems to be that since God transcends nature and the human form, we should transgress it. Transcendence is expressed in transgression. God is imagined not as the essence of reality, as in genuinely traditional metaphysics, but as outside reality. And so to approach God is to break reality down. No distinctions. The mind's ephemeral desires and appetites should be free to forever shape the world, the body, rewrite the genetic code, so on. There's something of a world-denying Gnosticism here, escape from the world. It reminds me of how Elon Musk has recommended Ian Banks's books, which are sci-fi novels in which this kind of future civilization, the culture, can in fact radically transform human beings in all kinds of ways. People turn themselves into other species and all sorts of crazy stuff.
The most accurate portrayal of a future with superintelligent AI was done by Ian Banks. The culture books of Ian Banks are the best. That's probably the best envisioning of a future AI.
For Thiel, it's interesting that he wants to vibe off Catholic thought. He gets some of his ideas from René Girard, for example, about whom I've made a video, and actually criticizes Calvinism.
God is not behind history. God is not causing everything.
God is behind Jesus Christ entering history because God was not going to leave us. So at some point, God is going to step in.
I am not that Calvinist. And
that's not Calvinism.
Calvinism is actually closer to Thiel than Catholic thought in that it does tend to conceptualize God as a kind of pure potency, absolute sovereignty, which does not coincide with his other attributes of mercy and justice and such. You end up with a God that's just power in any direction, not really distinct from a merely accidental Big Bang, say, if you take that to its final consequences. If you say God is free and is free to act unjustly, you're basically saying God is free to create a square circle. Sure, but then by definition, that circle is not a circle, it's a square. And that's the kind of God that Thiel is positing. existing biological and moral structures don't really stem from divine attributes. We are called not to preserve and enhance natural order, but break it down. He's more a heretical Calvinist than a heretical Catholic. Staying on the issue of theology, this interview is interesting because it comes on the heels of another interview, Ted Cruz, with Tucker Carlson. And if Thiel divorces Christianity from morality and spirituality through big brain esoteric philosophizing, Cruz does the same through a kind of surface level, very superficial reading. Cruz admitted that being a Christian politician for him isn't about pragmatic strategic leadership or moral principles. It's mainly about commitment to a specific state. As low information an approach to history and scripture as you can have, really.
Because biblically we're commanded to support Israel. But number two...
Hold on. Hold on. You're a senator, and now you're throwing out theology, and I am a Christian, and I am allowed to weigh in on this. We are commanded as Christians to support the government of Israel?
Cruz and Thiel have equal but opposite anti-Christianities. So back to Thiel. Morality would end up being about our power and presumably our desire to alter the structure of nature. He's almost taking the Nietzschean criticism of Christianity and asserting it as his religion. It's kind of anti-life. Degeneracy for Thiel isn't moral degeneracy, it's technical and economic stagnation. Restraining innovation is evil. FDA regulations and some eventual one-world government trying to stop us from advancing is the Antichrist.
That the entire world has submitted for 50 years to peace and safetyism. This is 1 Thessalonians 5:3. The slogan of the Antichrist is peace and safety. And we've submitted to, the FDA regulates not just drugs in the U.S., but de facto in the whole world, because the rest of the world defers to the FDA. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission effectively regulates nuclear power plants all over the world. People, you can't design a modular nuclear reactor and just build it in Argentina. They won't trust the Argentinian regulators. They're going to defer to the U.S. And so it's at least a question about why we've had 50 years of stagnation. And
does it make sense to say that evil is about restraining innovation? To some degree. We have to cultivate our skills and knowledge, sure, but sometimes we also have to prune to cut back. Advancement isn't good as such. It's actually difficult to make real hot takes because the interviewer himself nails Thiel's inconsistencies a few times. Any one-world government would need Thiel's own Palantir-type surveillance, predictive, big data crunching technology, at the very least, in order to pull off the difficult logistical task of integrating the whole planet's administrations. And the point of pursuing freedom in a very naive way is that it ends up leading you to worse, more oppressive structures, right? If you break society down and suddenly you can't rely on your neighbors, now you have to rely on top-down systems of control for security. And we've seen this many times in the history of the West recently. And so it's pretty logical that Thiel ends up supporting surveillance technology being developed and all sorts of things that are just objectively likely to lead to oppression in the pursuit of abstract, naive freedom. It's part of that sloppy thinking that also leads him to think that godliness is about breaking with the structure of things or natural order. It's a kind of Gen X sci-fi utopianism that ends up in false dichotomies and desire to flee the complexity of life. The same basic contradiction shows up all over Thiel's thinking, and to be fair, he admits that.
I'm schizophrenic on this stuff.
For example, he contrasts politics to technology as though his companies like Palantir, which he co-founded in 2003, didn't get CIA funding. Karp, his Palantir co-founder in the Technological Republic, actually credits Thiel for big picture thinking, the idea that Silicon Valley tech companies need to stop making consumer goods, toys basically, and get back to changing the world, which means working with Washington to fight for Karp's vision of modern global liberalism. And Thiel makes basically the same case himself. MAGA was about trying to get society and the state focused on technological innovation to recover the hyper-optimistic, quasi-spiritual vision of previous decades when people were going so far as to believe in literal bodily immortality just around the corner.
Culturally, what I imagine it looks like is early modernity, where people, they thought we would cure diseases. They thought we would have radical life extension. Immortality was part of the project of early modernity. It was Francis Bacon, Condorcet. It was, and maybe it was anti-Christian. Maybe it was downstream of Christianity. It was competitive. If Christianity promised you a physical resurrection, science was not going to succeed unless it promised you the exact same thing. And then, but I don't know. I remember 1999, 2000 when we were running PayPal. One of my co-founders, Luke Nosek, he was into Alcor and cryonics, and people should freeze themselves. And we had one day where we took the whole company to a freezing party. A Tupperware party. People sell Tupperware policies at a freezing party.
They sell their. Was it just your heads? What was going to be frozen?
You could get a full body or just a head.
Just the head was cheaper.
It was just
Materialistic scientific progress basically replacing spirituality. The patriotism of MAGA is, for Thiel, a bit of a convenient disguise to get government and society on his wavelength. Same with his libertarianism. MAGA libertarianism, like Christianity, are ops to get people excited, create some sense of direction, utopianism, basically being parasitic on older visions of the good, older concepts of nationhood or freedom or transcendence. You're sucking the energy from people's desire for traditional moral certainties to get funding to merge Silicon Valley with Washington. But again, to be fair, Thiel is pretty transparent about all this, which we can appreciate. And it points to this wider trend of using specifically Catholicism as a kind of covering for technocracy, which I'm seeing. But it also shows us how sloppy the thinking of the people funding a lot of this really ends up being. The direction here is towards a kind of Warhammer 40,000 neo-religious techno dystopia, but without the cool aesthetics. Okay, just a quick reaction video. I thought it'd be interesting to get into Thiel's ideas as he expresses them, not a deep dive or anything. There's ways to help the channel in the description. You can join my Substack, Twitter, etc., buy me a coffee, and please subscribe if you would like to, and until next time.